G'day guys. Today I'm here to talk to you about the 5 most influential books I've read in terms of business and life and things like that. I'm not counting just the 5 best books I've read because some of them are fictional, the 5 best business related books. Now, if you like this channel, make sure to subscribe, like and comment because that engagement helps boost the video up and more people can see it. So let's kick it off. Number 5, most important book I've read with business is Black Swan by Nassim Taleb. So Nassim Taleb was an options trader and risk analyst turned essayist and mathematician. His whole claim to fame is what's called the Black Swan event. Now, Black Swan events are large, unpredictable, unexpected events with huge ramifications that in hindsight were seen as easily predictable. So as an example, they actually use a black swan that if your theory, and the running theory for hundreds of years, was there's no such thing as a black swan, as soon as you see one, the entire theory is disproven. So things like stock market crashes, 9/11, unexpected wars are all black swan events. The crux of his book is that humans are really bad at predicting what's called long tail risk events, which are things like 9/11 or you getting hit by a car and dying. They're life-altering events, good and bad, they're not necessarily negative events, but humans can't really predict them, but they decide major courses on your life. So for instance, meeting your wife is a black swan event because no one goes out and they're like, oh, well, in 6 months' time I'm gonna meet my wife. It happens, but it's life-changing. Because humans are really bad at predicting black swan events, we need to structure our systems, our societies, and our lives in order to be robust and what's called anti-fragile, which means you can take advantage of black swan events. So there's a really good example in the book of how entrepreneurs use black swan events. The strategy for discoverers and entrepreneurs is to rely less on top-down planning and focus maximum on tinkering and recognizing opportunities when they present themselves. ... The strategy then is to tinker in as many things as possible and try to collect as many black swan opportunities as you can. So that absolutely blew my thinking. Rather than focusing and niching down on a single thing to do with your life, his whole philosophy is be interested in as many things as possible, and then when an event pops up, bang, grab it and take advantage of it. Because a majority of life-changing things in our lives, as I mentioned, are black swan events. It's really interesting to see this particularly in the COVID situation, because COVID is a black swan event. Whilst in hindsight, you could predict that a massive pandemic would affect a globally connected world, you can't really predict what it would be and when. And you can see people who've adapted to this black swan event and taken advantage of it, and people who haven't. Especially governments, large corporations, things like that, have really struggled because their systems aren't anti-fragile. Anti-fragile systems aren't particularly efficient a lot of the time, but they can take a knock. Whereas highly efficient systems are generally fragile because they're designed to be sleek. So a single knock will destroy them. So as an example, if you think of a Formula 1 car, a Formula 1 car is extremely fragile. It's really good at racing around a circuit at 300 kilometers an hour, but if you put it on a dirt road, it would literally explode. So when you're thinking about life, try to build a rally car as your life rather than a Formula 1 car. It's not as quick, but it can handle a lot of knocks. So the key takeaway from this is it completely changed the way I thought about planning my life, businesses, pretty much everything. I try to be as anti-fragile as possible and always be open to fast opportunities to pivot to and take advantage of. And I just think there's a ton of value in that. Number 4, most influential book I've ever read is Factfulness by Hans Rosling. So this book's interesting and it's sort of similar to Better Angels of Our Nature by Steve Pinker in that the subtitle is 10 Reasons We're Wrong About the World and Why Things Are Better Than You Think. The media structure at the moment is designed to promote outrage and emotional reactions. As a result, we get fed predominantly outrageous news. So if you survey a lot of people, if I ask you this, has the number of women and girls receiving a high school education over the last 20 years increased or declined? Tell me what you think. The answer is it's increased massively. And basically every single metric has increased massively over the last 50 years in terms of life expectancy, reduction in poverty, inflation-adjusted income globally. Now is the best time in all of history to be alive by a long shot. And people sometimes don't really appreciate that. And I think this book really highlights the fact that we are moving in the right direction. Now, it's not a straight line, it's bumpy, but we are moving. And a lot of people will say, well, yeah, but bad things happen. Yeah, they do. But I'd rather have a heart attack or break my arm now than 200 years ago. Bad things will continue to happen. We just have far more resources to effectively deal with them. In fact, I'll pose a question to you. What era would you rather live in? Write in the comments what era you'd rather live in. Because every other era was terrible except for now. Do you want to live in a time when infant mortality is like 50%? Do you want to live in a time before antibiotics? Do you want to live in a time where you never go more than 20 kilometers away from your birthplace? Do you want to live in a time when a whole group of people can show up at your village and kill you and there's nothing they can do? Now is the best time to be alive, and this book keeps reminding me of that over and over. Book number 3, 33 Strategies of War by Robert Greene. So this is an oldie. I got this bad boy probably when I was like 18 and started reading it. Robert Greene is a historian slash essayist slash journalist who essentially goes through historical examples and interesting times in history and pulls lessons out of them and puts them into context for modern life, such as in your career, in your personal life, in your personal struggles. And what I really like about it is it just showed me that people have been going through the same shit for thousands of years, and we forget that. And there's strategies for guys like Machiavelli, Sun Tzu, like famous Civil War generals, famous Roman generals, that these strategies they're using then are still valid now and can be applied to other areas of our lives. Here's an example of one of my favorite chapters. It's called Negotiate While Advancing, the Diplomatic War Strategy. And the blurb is, before and during negotiations, you must keep advancing, creating relentless pressure and compelling the other side to settle on your terms. The more you take, the more you can give back in meaningless concessions. Create a reputation for being tough and uncompromising so that people are back on their heels before they even meet you. So there's multiple lessons like this, which whilst you don't have to, if you're trying to buy a car, don't threaten to kill the guy's family or anything, but they're historical lessons which you can work into every day. And I really like looking at history to pull out examples that you can use in your day-to-day life. Because we just repeat ourselves endlessly in life, so might as well learn. Number 2, the oldie and the goodie, 4-hour work week. I've done a whole other video on how I built a business using 4-hour work week. And this is my number 2 most influential book I've ever read. So this book will literally break down and explain to you how to build an extremely lean, cost-effective outsourced business to free up your time. Tim Ferriss's whole thing, other than experimenting relentlessly on himself, is creating ways to free up time. His version of wealth is having time to pursue the things you like, not unlimited money. Because if you have unlimited money, but you work 80 hours a week, you don't really have a very balanced or satisfying life, unless you fucking love your job for some reason. So the reason this book kind of shook me to my core was I was in corporate banking when I read it, and it was all I knew. And I just thought, maybe I can earn the same amount of money and just not do as much boring shit with my life. That's basically the crux of it. And once that thought was implanted, it changed the way I think about my time, my income, my priorities, my hobbies. It just shifted my thinking completely. I cannot recommend highly enough that you read this book and reread it. All right, the number 1 most influential book I've read is The Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday. So this is a bit of an odd book to choose as number 1, as it's just a single passage every day that takes you through the Stoic philosophy. So the reason I like it is, once again, no matter how hard your life is or what shit you got going on in your life, chances are someone in the past has experienced a similar thing. And Stoicism is a strategy that's been used by countless people throughout history to get through difficult times. People like Viktor Frankl in Man's Search for Meaning. Literally Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Roman emperors of all time, was a Stoic himself. So I highly, highly recommend having this. Every morning I get up and give this a read. It also has a journal that you can buy as well, where you can journal particular topics every day, which I do. So as an example, I'll read today's. January 15. In Seneca's essay on tranquility, he believes that the Greek word eurythma, I'm not going to read that one. As an example, March 14. Self-deception is our enemy. Self-deception, delusions of grandeur. These aren't just annoying personality traits. Ego is more off-putting and obnoxious. So, as a selection of examples of topics that are covered each day, they're things like self-deception is our enemy. Be ready and happy at home. Work is therapy. Protect the flame. So each day it just gives you a small meditation to think about throughout the day. And I honestly think it's done more for my thought process and mental health overall. Being able to contemplate this in the morning rather than being thrown into the day, I think is key. So this is my #1 most recommended book that's influenced me. So they're the top 5, guys. I'll put links just to randomly on Amazon or where I got them from so you can see them. Make sure you comment, subscribe. Let me know what your favorite books are. Do you disagree? What stuff do you like? Let me know. Chat to you later.